mean, everyone has something they can appreciate a partner for. You know, that they paid the bills, or they can find the keys that morning when we lost them, or something. And priming is when you train your mind to notice certain things, and after a while of looking for, I got to do something they did really appreciate at night, you begin to look for those things you can appreciate, and it begins to transform.
And so the roots of that come in what we want to go now into how we help couples get in touch with one of the memories that we are convinced couples have to recover. No matter what they say about their memory, they have to recover it. And they may get a little and then eventually a lot, which is the memory of the childhood interactions that created their unconscious attraction to their partner and their defense system. They have to know that. And as you may have been picking up from us, we do not spend a whole lot of time anymore exploring the inner world. Because it occurred one day that when you explore the inner world, you're exploring essentially the memories and dreams and the imagination. But to change the inner world, it needs more input from the outside, like the information that created the inner world. You can't change it by just staying inside because there's no new data there. You can understand it, you can see it, you can get insight into it, you can appreciate it, you can know it. But changing requires a new variable, which is new experience from the outside that's brought in to change the gestalt of the inside construction. So this is why we focus on the interactive space, which is the space between, rather than intrapsychic space. But we do want to go inside a little to get the outcome of unattuned parenting. Now, what in our work and in the literature, if you read it carefully, there are only two dysfunctional parenting patterns, and they are practically universal, which is the parenting in which one experiences intrusiveness, which is the parent is in your face, controlling, talking, guiding. Did you bring your jacket? What are you thinking? You can't think that. You better watch what you say. In other words, there's this monitor, not a mentor, but a monitor. And that person produces a particular set of defenses which become characterological, because they're characterological, meaning they didn't come with this. Character to us doesn't mean that you came with this. It means that you practiced it so much that it became a part of the very fabric of your own mind. It was repeated so long that it became built in as a new structure. So like go on. So, or the neglectful caretaker, who is just not there even when they're there. So Helen talked about her parents this morning. It's interesting that Helen's lived with her parents all through her childhood and into adulthood. And my parents both died in my childhood before I was 6. We have the same, but we have the same parenting experience. That is, my caretakers were farmers. And you know, if you ever lived on a farm and it was a subsistence farm, that's all you do, is go to the fields and work with the animals. And the children may go with you, but you don't relate to the children except to tell them to, pick up that hoe or do that, or feed that cow or do whatever else. There's no much relating. So we came out of our childhoods with different parents, one alive, one both dead, with the same experience of childhood, childhood neglect. And then I was kind of adopted by my older sister, who was the opposite of my mother, who just was absolutely sure that every child around her, including her own and me, was going to grow up right. So she became the intrusive caretaker, so I got both of those. So, and I can get triggered by neglect or intrusion. And it's sort of a chaotic life to see which one of these am I going to react to. And then I have to wonder which one of these did I become. Because you always internalize those parents. I had to internalize both of them. did years ago was to spend, and probably you've done the same thing, session after session after session, in all different kinds of ways, exploring childhood. Well, after you've sat in the chair about 40 years, you realize that most childhoods fall into categories. They had neglectful or intrusive parents. And after a while, you can take all of the wounding and, yeah, I should be moving faster.
Yeah, we're going to stay on time this afternoon.
Okay.
They should be...
Yeah. Okay, we got a little late start, so we'll do that now.
Right.
But I think I'm not going to do the demo, but just do the practice.
Okay.
And that'll save that amount of time.
Okay, so the practice at 1:20?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, but I'm going to get that.
So, you know, I love the idea of cobbling things together that work. And Mark knows so much about, like, making sure you have an internalized parent who puts you in their lap at a moment like that and gives you a big hug. Fuck everybody else. Your internal parent loves you. So anyway, so talk with Mark. And he's got papers written. I can't wait to read his papers. Okay, anyone else?
So, given notice that I want to make a statement about why do we do this exercise. Remember, our overarching framework was differentiation is the therapeutic process. This helps couples differentiate their childhood from their partner's childhood. Because other than that, just sort of think like, well, I had a wonderful childhood, you must have had a terrible one. But they don't know what it was. And the second thing is that it helps couples move to empathy. If you remember on the chart of the sort of dissolution of the self that comes after rupture connecting, one of the things lost is empathy. So therapy needs to build that back into the relationships. And one way to do it is to help people become vulnerable to the need, to the wound and the need, and then be empathic about that. The third thing is the people you ask about the receiving love thing. One of the shortest answers, and it occurred to me after it was asked about how do you learn to receive love? And there's now a scientific basis for being able to do this. And it turns out that you do not learn to receive love by self-love. That you learn to receive love by giving love. And that the neurophysiological processes are that the emotional, if the love is emotional, that is, it's intense and emotional, expressed, and it's real, that the part of the brain is not oriented to the outside world. So that whatever I run through my brain at the outside world, that part of my brain thinks I'm talking to it. So if it's called a parallel process. So if I say, I love you, that part of the brain hears it as I love you. And it doesn't work if you say, I love myself. Because there's something in the brain that does not go there with the same effect. It's like we are oriented to others. And when you connect with others and send energy to them, the same energy goes out and down at the same time. So if you ever want to get over your inability to receive love, give love, and you will become self-loving and therefore can receive love. It doesn't work the other way around, at least we haven't found it to be. Now we want to give you a break.
Yes, so what we have is a break, and then there's a discussion on the brain when you get back, and simple ways that you can teach your clients, your couples, how important the brain is to understanding relationships and how they can learn it quickly, what they need to know. And then we're going to have you learn about how to handle problems, to teach your clients how to handle the big ones. So I want to say, in finishing up, thinking about intrusion or neglect and the need people bring to their relationships, that the two things that I think are most powerful about Imago therapy is that childhood wound piece, that transformation that one partner can feel when the other partner is taking all the emotional oxygen. They're, thus the first partner is dying because there's no air to breathe, that the other person, it's all about them, 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 them. You and I are one, but I'm the one, that happens at the wedding altar, and like all they think about is themselves, and you're there, and they don't see you, and you're shriveling up, and your partner's a monster, and beginning to shift from thinking of your partner, that very same partner, instead of them being a monster, that they're struggling with the childhood issue, that they're a wounded person. And they have a wound and they don't know what to do with it. And they need a partner to walk with them, to help them handle their childhood wound. And it just can transform everything. And the empathy that comes when you can imagine a partner that way. But the second thing is the brain, and the power of the brain, the power of brain science to help individuals understand how to have a transformed relationship. And I'll talk through real quickly. How many of you read the neuroscience for the lay person? How about, how many of you are psychiatrists that got through school, studying? You didn't get out into the world until you really could dissect the brain. All right. About half the room is pretty comfortable with neuroscience. It's so simple. It's gotten so simple to teach. If you want to just understand little bits of it, and understanding these little bits can be transformational. And it's a powerful way to understand our relationships. Throughout the last decades, in psychiatry departments, we're taught about the triune brain, lower, mid, and upper brain. Harville had the idea of taking Imago therapy out of the clinic and presenting it as safe conversations to anybody. And we went to a city and offered it in Dallas, Texas. He'd been living in New York for 30 years. So we went to Dallas and said, does anyone want this stuff? And the low-income community in Dallas wanted it. And we were brought into an agency for the population that spoke Spanish and didn't speak hardly any English. So we took our slides and they converted them into Spanish, and they made a manual that was Spanish. And we did our pilot workshop in South Dallas with 65 couples at a place called Avance, an agency that serves the parents of the kids in the public schools. Because those parents had been given parenting information for years and information on how to communicate with school administration and teachers. But in spite of all the parenting courses, they were complaining. The men were saying, my wife and I are fighting. Our kids can't stand to be around us because we're fighting. Do you have anything to help us with marriages? Well, they didn't, so they asked us to come in and help them with their couples, with their marriages. And long story short, in 5 hours, we had the most transformational workshop when we started an appreciation, teaching them an appreciation at the beginning. Jose and Marie volunteered to do the demo, and both of them just had tears running down their cheeks with Jose saying, at the end, in my whole life, no one's ever appreciated me. And he did the litany of all he's done for his family, and he doesn't expect appreciations, but no one had ever told him, I really appreciate you. And they did simultaneous translation. So Harville, we don't speak Spanish, but they da-da-da, and they had da-da-da. So this stuff really works. And the way we told them about the brain, which we did that day in our 5-hour workshop, was there are 2 parts of the brain. The higher brain, which we call the owl, and the lower brain, which we call the crocodile brain. So this is neuroscience reduced to an explanation that anyone can get, like school kids can get this. So first, let me tell you about the crocodile brain. So it's so important to your life because it helps keep you alive. And so you really want to love many things that the crocodile brain does, but you have to learn about the crocodile brain. So in my lectures with it, I tell them, boy, the crocodile brain acts spontaneously without thinking. It's reactive, it just spontaneously reacts to things. For example, if you go into your kitchen and you think your stove is off, and you lean against your stove for a minute, you're talking to someone else, but someone's left it on, suddenly it's hot. But do you think about your options before you lift your hand? No, you just automatically lift your hand. That's the lower brain reacting. If you have water in your eyes in the shower, it just blinks, you know. This is the crocodile brain, who is so wonderful. It wants to be your friend. It wants to protect us. It is the seat of fear and anger. You have to know about that too. So Harville from South Georgia, we visit his family, and there's swamps in South Georgia. And alligators are there, and crocodiles. And they like to sunbathe, and they sort of have a little smile on their face if you leave them alone. And they're sort of really dear creatures. But if they get riled up, they can really suddenly snap. And it ain't pretty. What can happen? Like they can just absolutely, Lori, they'll chop off your arm like that in a minute. So have you ever been in with someone like that? I mean, suddenly, yeah. Has anyone ever, their crocodile brain went off and all you did was, what did I do? But so it's not pretty. I know at night when Harville and I in our blended family, at the end of the day, we had rushed and rushed and rushed and rushed and rushed. The kids were down, the phone didn't ring. And right before going to bed, that was a time when I could have Harville's undivided attention to tell him all the things he did wrong that day. Has anyone ever felt like, I mean, to improve him? It was to improve him, right? I mean, it was for a good reason, right? Well, like that's not a good time. Bam, goes Harville. And so what you need to learn to do, or what you need to learn is that if you push your partner's buttons, those phrases, oh gosh, the next morning you go, I'm so sorry, I said all those things, I just flipped my lid. I went out of my mind, like and this is the truth. The lower brain takes over, and you can't be rational when the crocodile brain goes off. So it's good to teach your clients not to ever do anything that ignites their crocodile brain. And that's why we talk about zero negativity. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And we teach couples to bring up any of their issues they're frustrated about in a way that their partner's crocodile brain doesn't go off. Okay, the other part of the brain, the owl brain, is, we just love the owl brain, upper part of the brain. And this is how you can teach your clients in your office. And even the non-readers are fascinated with this. Well, really a lot of scholarly people, a lot of really, 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 really smart people just don't like to read nuanced neuroscience. And even, truck drivers or CEOs, they really need to learn that they have two parts of the brain. The upper brain organizes data. It generates new ideas. And it creates win-wins. The lower brain is, it's my way or the highway. Figure it out. You're either with me or against me. But the upper brain, if a person is in that part of the brain, they can go, but isn't there a way I can get what I want and you can get what you want too? And you can create win-win. So you want to live your relationship in the upper brain. That's the bottom line. So after you teach them that they have two parts, it's all about getting to the upper brain. The prime directive of the brain is simply to keep you alive. And at every single moment, when, for example, those of you in the room who are partnered, when you're with your partner's automatically scanning you and anyone else, is it safe or dangerous to be where I am right now? When it's dangerous, we flee, fight, or freeze. And when it's safe, we can play, nurture, mate, create, and connect. Now, one other thing about the brain, it has two brain hemispheres. The left brain hemisphere is the thinking brain, and the right brain hemisphere is the intuitive feeling part of the brain. So how many people know about this, the left and right brain hemispheres? So with this information was extremely helpful to our relationship. So I'm going to go into a little detail about it. It actually helped save our marriage one day. So back to our story. Here we are, Harville and I. We're struggling to blend our family. And his two and my two, we had two more. I thought, oh gosh, the Brady Bunch, this is going to be so exciting. Not. So then we worked, and after 10 years, the book got published. And it came out, and I thought, oh gosh, who's going to buy a book by someone named Harville? I'm a little worried about that. We were in New York, Madison Avenue, so I dragged Harville. Sometimes he wouldn't go, but I would go in the Madison Avenue bookstores. I'd say, I'd like 2 copies of Reading Love You Want, please. And they'd go, never heard of it. I go, you haven't heard of that? Oh, God. And they said, check the back of that. It's in a box. And so they, oh, thank you so much. I'll take 2 copies. And walking out, I'd put them in the front window. And then go to the next. And go to the next. I'm a marketer. I help, like, and who else is going to buy anyway? 5 weeks after the book came out, the phone rang. I picked it up. Hello? Dr. Hendrix, please. He's not here, I'll take a message. This is the Oprah Winfrey studio. We'd like him on the show. Let me take your name and number, and I'll have him call you. Okay, bye. Click. Yay! Oh, what's he going to wear? Okay. So, there he was. The book was pretty soon in so many other languages. There he is in the past. And people began to come for therapy, in Imago Therapy. It had just been given the name, and he had just begun training people, which I worked on with him. And the book in time is now published in 60 languages, and therapists have come from, that's an old slide, these are old slides, it's 50 countries, and we were at a meeting not long ago, and in the middle of the meeting, this was like last year, at the end of the meeting they said it's now 52 countries, and at the end of the meeting it was 53 countries. So I think the accurate number is 53. This stuff is out there like a zeitgeist. There's an organization that runs all this, it's sort of bankrupt, but the book is getting out and people are loving it all over the world. So am I happy or what, right? Well, not fully. I was so happy about the book, but there were problems at home. And so finally, Harville agreed with me to go to a New York therapist. And thank God there's so many great therapists in New York, right? You'd think we'd get a great one. Well, we went to the first, and we knew more than them, so we fired that therapist. So we went to the second one, same thing happened. We knew more than we fired because it was boring. So the third one, anyway, we kept firing therapists, and the fifth therapist fired us and called us the couple from hell. Yeah, it was true. It was true. So we really had no choice but to go to the divorce lawyers. Because for me, I just couldn't handle the discrepancy of everyone thinking, I didn't need a perfect marriage, but for everyone to meet us and think we had one, and secretly we didn't. It was just the honesty about it was too hard. And so we went to the therapist, and so we announced to our family we were divorcing, and there was an annual meeting of Imago therapists, and we told all of them that we were divorcing as well. And then I read a book on feminist epistemology. Has anyone ever read the book Women's Way of Knowing? And it talks about left brain knowing is a way you can know things, and there's left brain distance knowing, and there's right brain connected knowing. It's two ways of knowing. And if you're developed in your left brain hemisphere and you're good at distance knowing, thank goodness. I mean, you can really analyze things like the person who created this room, this architect. They had to distance from how this room is built to make sure the beams don't fall down. They have to step back, exactly how long they should be, what's the weight of the nails and all this to keep everything up. So you distance from the thing to be known, to know it. Right brain knowing, you swing into the thing to be known and you feel it. You have a felt experiencing of it, and then you swing out again. That's the right brain knowing. It's a gut knowing. It's an intuitive knowing. So this is sort of overgeneralizing this and oversimplifying a bit. But somehow, when that realization came into my mind, and I realized I could feel the problems in our family, and Harville would go, I don't think there are any problems. And I go, well, they're there. And he would no. I said, well, I just know it. And then, of course, as a right brain person, I was wordy. I didn't know how to talk succinctly. And then Harville was just going, I don't think there are any problems here. So that information, I suddenly realized that maybe my right brain hemisphere had hijacked my neural energy, and maybe Harville's left brain hemisphere was hijacked. Anyway, I suddenly went to him and I said, Harville, maybe we don't need a divorce. Maybe we just need brain surgery. And sorry about, yes. So that really jumped. So that's what we needed, just to learn to help our brains move across those two neural hemispheres in an effective way. And so Harville was willing to, oh wow, that's really interesting, and sit down, and we began to explore the ways that I needed to not be so right brain and to be more left brain, more rational when I spoke with him, and then ways he needed to be not as rational, but to speak to me in a more feeling way. And we began to change our brains by talking to each other, and that's what saved our marriage. So neuroplasticity was discovered by the neuroscientists in the 1990s, I believe, and it is so empowering. And now couples can be helped in ways they've never been helped before, if they learn about the brain.
So this is a process we spend a lot of time on in the formal training program, and it will show it to you. And it's Helen and me doing what we call the behavior change express process.
So Harville, are you available for me to express a frustration?
So you're wondering if I'm available for you to express a frustration? Yes, I'm available. I'm available now.
Well, I just want to share that it feels like we haven't been dialoguing very much recently, and that I would really like for us to use the dialogue process more.
So let me see if I've got that. Your frustration is that we have not been dialoguing a lot recently, and that you're wanting us to do the dialogue process more. Did I get that?
That's right.
Okay. So is there more about that?
Well, it does feel like that we have been on a lot of planes and been busy talking and writing and telling others about dialogue, and we get so busy doing that, and that we then don't take the time to slow down and really do it for each other.
So if I'm getting that, we're on planes so much and doing so many things and being so busy that we just don't slow down enough to dialogue enough. And you're wanting us to change that. Am I getting that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is there more about that?
Well, sometimes I miss you.
Sometimes you miss me.
I mean, I love you so much, and just miss that contact with you.
So you miss me, and you just miss the contact with me. And you want us to slow down so that we can be in dialogue more, in touch more. Is there more about that?
No.
Well, do you have a memory of an experience from your childhood where that was important to you? Does this bring up anything from your past?
Yeah, I think in my childhood, that whole household was sort of brimming with activity, but I can remember times that I remember one day especially, I was just wanting someone to talk to, and it didn't feel like there was anyone there to talk to.
So what it does bring up from childhood is that your house, that the household you grew up in, was just brimming with activity, and there was no one there to talk to. I get that. Is there more about that?
Well, and then in my relationship with you, at times, I think we feel such a connection. And the connection feels so good and authentic and real. And you're so there for me and so honest and so present. And I just love that, and I miss it when it's not there.
So the more is that in our relationship, sometimes we feel such a strong connection, and you just feel me being there, and you love it, and you just want more of that.
Yes.
So is there more about that? Well, let me see if I've got it all then. If I'm getting it all, you have a frustration, and the frustration is that we don't dialogue enough, and that since we teach dialogue to other people, that we should use it more ourselves. And also that when you think about us being so busy that we don't dialogue enough and don't get to connect enough, that reminds you sometimes of how hectic and busy your household was when you were a child, and there was just nobody there to connect to. and to talk to. Did I get it all? Well, that makes a lot of sense, that you'd want to dialogue more. And also I heard that when we are connected, that you feel that so much that you want that more, and it makes an awful lot of sense that you'd want us to dialogue more so we could have that connection that we both enjoy so much. And it makes even more sense given that in your childhood there was such a hectic life that nobody was there to dialogue with it, to be present. So it makes an awful lot of sense that given that, and given that when we are connected, it's so wonderful that you would want us to be in dialogue way more often than we are in. Does that feel validating? Is that what you're experiencing?
It does. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can imagine that, and I don't have to imagine, I can see how joyful you look as you think about us being more connected more of the time.
Right. Yeah, and it's connected to each other, but also connected what we say with what we do. That it would feel like an integrity and an integration of. It would feel very connected and integrous and joyful.
So it would feel not only joyful for you and me to be in dialogue more because of the power and the fun of the connection, but it would also feel integrous to you, since we are teaching this dialogue to other couples, that we practice it more. That's a feeling of integrous. So, given all that, the frustration, what do you need from me that would help to heal all that? What is the big wish that you wish were always true?
Well, I wish I was never deflected, and that I never deflected you. That we always, if one of us said something, the other always received what the other was saying.
So the big wish is that you never be deflected, and that we never deflect each other.
Right.
And that we always really be there and listen. That's the really big wish. And if you had that all the time, you'd be happy. Yeah. And that makes sense. So can you break that down to me in sort of bite-sized pieces? Give me a behavior change request that's specific and measurable, and something that's a behavior I can do and do it over and over again, and and also maybe a time limit on it, so that I know how long you want the behavior, like for 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months. I know you said forever, but can we kind of put it into a doable, achievable behavior? And I'd like you to give me 2 or 3 choices.
Okay, 2 or 3 choices.
2 or 3 choices, yeah. Because I want to really succeed. And if you give me one and it's like it's bigger than I can do, then I might just fail. But if you give me 2 or 3 choices, then I imagine I could do one of them.
Okay. Well, I think what would address this for me is if every night before we went to bed in the next month, that we do a check-in where one night you were willing to be in dialogue with me around anything I wanted to say, and the next night I would be in dialogue with you.
So the first request for me to consider, did you say every day?
Every night.
Every night. Every night for a month. That you want us to check in with each other and alternate that checking in and have a dialogue. And the night that I check in with you, you would talk about anything you wanted to, and the next night I talk about anything I would do. And you want to do that every day for a month.
Right.
Okay. that's a second. But
No, a second-
that would also address the frustration.
A second option would be to sign up for Getting the Love You Want workshop. And just have a weekend sometime in the next 2 months where we went through that whole process for the whole weekend.
So let me see if I'm getting that. You want us to sign up for Getting the Love You Want workshop and go through that whole process for a whole weekend. I get that. Okay. And is that third choice?
Third, to use the couples manual at home like every weekend for the next couple weeks. Maybe for the next month, 4 weekends in a row to take a couple hours and go through the manual.
So the third request is to take the couples workshop manual and use that, go through that every weekend. Did I get that for a month? About 4 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me see if I've got all 3 requests. The first one is to do every night of the week for the next month, to do a check-in and alternate that. The second one is to go to a couples workshop. And the third one is to go through the workshop manual for the next 4 weekends and work on and just go through that process again. Did I get them all?
Yeah, if we went through the manual ourselves, like do 1 or 2 exercises. One weekend and 1 or 2 the next weekend.
One or two to do, for the third one, you want to add to that to do 1 or 2 of the exercises in the manual each weekend and sort of work our way through it in 4 weekends. Okay, so I want to pick one of those. And I want to pick something that's challenging, and I think what I'd like to do is to, I think the one I picked is the first one. That feels really good to me, that every night for a month that we dialogue and make it very, make it a very good evening, every night for a month. So I want to gift you. I will give that to you as a gift. Every night for the next month, I will initiate us having a dialogue, and one night you'll take turns, and one night I'll take turns. And we'll do that for a month. I'll gift you with that. And I really appreciate your asking me for that, because it will help me grow a part of me that I really need to grow, and that is to be more present and to take more initiative in creating presence. Because I think there was something I've internalized from childhood about that, of people not being present, is that I have not been present. So if I do that, the real joy in that will be that it will grow a part of me that hasn't fully developed. And I can imagine that it'll heal a part of you that didn't get addressed in childhood, of having somebody really present and listening. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
But that feels wonderful.
That feels wonderful.
And I'm glad you could listen and understand and respond. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you asked. Yeah. I'll look forward to many wonderful evenings for the next month.
Someone suggested the 2 of us get together and have someone take us doing 4 different Imago process. The first is mirroring appreciation, second one, mirroring at a deeper level and behavior change request, and then the last one, which Harville was about to show you, and they paid for all these great cameras and and when we did the first one, we couldn't do it, and I was so mad at Harville because he wasn't doing it right.
So, I mean, he wouldn't do it and write. And so then, with the cameras on, I sort of figured I had him, like the whole world watching.
Yeah.
So my request was, would you do the dialogue with me? Thinking that now I got him. Or this whole camera. I assumed we'd throw these tapes away. And Harville is so humble and open to having, just showing them in public now. And the last one, so after that one, we then did this one, and Harville's just a hero, a shero in this next one. So, anyway, that's sort of how it came up.
So in other words, you were holding me hostage while we...
Right, you couldn't leave the room because you're a good friend and everything.
You're going to
All
teach it.
money and $30,000 or something like that.
So most issues dissolve in normal dialogue. Sometimes there's a memory triggered by a behavior from a partner that requires a little deeper work. So what you just saw was, you did normal dialogue, but it had at the end that you could ask for something. So it wasn't just a dissolution of the issues because of the engagement and the connection which dissolve the negative energy. This is like a memory which of a real deep pain that's triggered, and you just can't dialogue that away. So you have to go to an action. And so this is one of the actions. You notice at the end that Helen gave me 3 choices. And the reason is you want to be sure your partner succeeds. So if you said, I want you to do this, and your partner says, no way in hell, then you're stuck. But we've never found a partner unable to do one of 3 choices. So the partner picks the one they can do, and they do that. And then that begins to break the impasse. And later on, you might try the other 2. But it's really important that we do this. Now, from our perspective as a therapist, this is still content that's uninteresting to us. What we're interested in is the process by which they're dealing with that. So it has to do with tone, with availability, with eye contact. In other words, a connecting process occurs with this, just as it does with all the other definitions, because we think it's the connection that ultimately heals, and not the behavior. But the brain wants a behavior. So you have to throw the hungry dog a bone, give them a behavior, and the brain then has some more confidence that it can predict that there will be a positive response from the partner. Because there's a behavior that's been identified, it's agreed upon, and it's going to be done once a week, twice a week, 4 times a month, or whatever. So that's that piece. So dealing with the frustrations that come up that require more time. Then the other piece we focus on a lot is how do you build up the bank of positive energy, of memories. And here's the thing to keep in mind, and it's important for couples to know this, it's important for us to know this as a couple, is you have to decide, what do you want your partner to remember about you? And they will remember whatever you do that hurts them. So you have to decide, do I want to leave with my partner memories of my anger, memories of my criticism, memories of my hurt, or do I want them when I walk into the room for their brain to say, my best friend, and the energy become cohesive instead of combative or whatever other energy comes. So you have to deal with it. When the negative stuff is coming, you have to deal with it by creating a behavior that creates a memory. This time, these are behaviors that are not arise out of conflict, but arise out of spontaneous gifts. So we call them caring behaviors. Partner does not ask for these. Partner, Helen does not ask for these. I simply give them. That's what makes them caring. Like Helen does a caring behavior for me, And it's interesting that it never is boring or never flattens. Every morning, even in a hotel, when I'm in the bathroom, trying to get myself awake and ready, Helen will put a cup of coffee on the counter, or if I'm out in the living room trying to get dressed, she'll put it down on whatever flat surface there is. And at home, always in the same place. And the coffee is, it's dark roast. I don't like light roast coffee. If I'm going to have coffee, I want to taste it. I don't want colored water. It'll have 1 packet of stevia in it. I don't want sugar, but I do want sweet. And it'll have about the equivalent of 4 tablespoons full or more of hot frothed milk. Now, I'm not very picky, but that's how I like my coffee. Every morning, Helen sets that cup, wrapped steaming hot, right down beside me while I'm working on my teeth or whatever else. Now, you can imagine, having done that now for years, the bank of memories I have for one behavior. Now, many other caring behaviors too, but I don't ask her for this coffee. She just discovered I like it that way. And one morning, she just brought me this cup of coffee. And so it became a ritual. But unlike many rituals which get boring and die, this ritual lives a vital life. Am I making sense? It's a caring behavior. So we want to show you how to have a dialogue about caring behaviors so that you build up memories of connecting.
Would you be willing to share with me what I can do to make you feel loved and safe and joyful in our relationship?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is you're discovering finally that what I really wanted was uninterrupted time to watch Star Trek shows rather than any of the paraphernalia about Star Trek.
Not the t-shirt. What you really wanted was uninterrupted time, watching Star Trek, not a mug or a Star Trek pin.
Right.
Okay.
But I wanted to be on that spaceship with the captains, Captain Picard and Kirk, and being given that space without being irritable with me or without interrupting me.
So you just wanted the time to feel like you were on the spaceship with the captains, Captain Picard and Captain Dr. Spock, is that it?
Dr. Spock,
Yeah.
Kirk, Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk, and you just wanted the feeling that you could watch that as long as you wanted without me being irritable. Okay.
Yeah, that was really, really important to me. It's I'm thinking as I'm actually having a memory that I'm surprised about why that's important, and my memory is that I'm sitting on the porch in the farmhouse where I grew up as a boy, and I'm reading a novel. I don't remember the novel. It was something like, it was one of the big Great Western novels, the Great Western Heroes. And my brother-in-law, with whom I was living, because when I lost my children, lost my parents when I was a child, would come up and say, "You're just wasting your time reading." And I finally had to go and hide with my book in order to get to read. And just that you respect my private time, and I can be in my office where I have my TV set, and if you do come in the room, it'll be to bring me a cup of coffee or popcorn and kiss me, and you don't get upset if I don't get up talk to you or something, you just let me have that. Let me have that space. I'm just aware how much that means to me. It's like you know that I'm me, and I'm separate, and I'm not you, and you allow me the space to be me, and to have this experience. That really touched me.
So let me see if I have that right. That what really began to touch you is just letting you have your space, exploring the outer space of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And having time exploring what you wanted to explore without feeling intruded on.
Yeah.
And that it reminds you of when you were little and when your parents died and you went to live to different families, that one time you were trying to read and your brother-in-law didn't like it. And that you loved...
They told me I was wasting my time. Get back to work.
That you were wasting your time and get back to work. Yeah. You know, on the farm they said things like that.
Yeah.
And that what would have felt good, it was just for you to have your own time to explore, and that you really appreciate that now that there's that respect of your time, and that I could just come in and say something positive to you, but really respect your space.
It was like I had to hide in childhood sometimes to have any of my time. I just had to disappear somewhere and hide, because if I was around, somebody had asked me to do something. Even if it had been already done 8 or 10 hours of work a day, somebody would ask me to do something. But I think also that's one piece of it, and the other piece that makes me feel cared about and loved is your ability to be present when I'm talking, and to be present when I'm imagining or dreaming about life. And life has been such a saga and so wonderful, and you will be there with me. I don't know. I mean, that moves me so much, and what I'm remembering as I'm saying that is that I can't remember that in childhood, and it's nobody's fault. You know, my mother and father died early, and the 6 years I was with her, she was so busy, just so and so tired because of her responsibilities with the children and the farm, that I don't have a memory of her being present. And or initiating, coming and asking me what I wanted, or doing the things that you did that didn't touch me, but at least you initiated. And I think the thing that touched me so much, that makes me feel so cared about, is that you'll come and ask, you'll come and ask me what do I need? I just did. And
let me see if I can mirror back what you've just been saying, that you remember in your childhood that to be you really had to hide.
Yeah.
And because there was so much criticism of that, and that what you're loving is that you can be honored in your process and not be interfered with or criticized for your process. But that also that in your childhood with people sort of disappearing, that when I am present with you, when I'm there for you, that really feels good to you. Just to be present to your experience and to ask you how you feel and what it is to feel good.
That really touches me, really makes me feel good. Because the people who were there were absent because they were so preoccupied. And so when you're so busy too, but when you focus, and I know that I'm in your sights, that just goes straight to my heart.
So that you have people in your world, sort of a sea of people coming in and out, but no one who would be present for you. And that I get busy too, but that when I slow down and I'm really present for you, that's what feels the most loving and the most caring. And not the gifts, but the being present.
Yeah,
Did I get that? Is there more about that?
No, not more. There is more, but I think that's enough for now.
Well, Harville, that makes a lot of sense. That the caring isn't about gifts or superficial things, but there's a depth kind of caring that you want and need and deserve. And I can imagine then when I respond both with respect for your space, but also being present for you, that makes you feel connected. Is that the feeling?
It's more than connected. It's a joyfulness. I'm aware that my tears are not the sadness of what I lost or didn't have, but the joy of what I have with you.
And that the tears aren't, that it's really about a joy, and that the tears aren't about the sadness about what you lost, but about the joy of what you have with me.
Right. You've got it.
But
That's the feeling.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for listening.
What it is that would make you feel loved.
Harville and I, we're both excellent at critical thinking in the best sense of the word. Like, we can analyze papers, we can assess different philosophies, physics, psychologies. We were trained to be critical thinkers, and neither of us knew how to have fun, and I called us one day fun impaired. Like, we did not know how to have fun. So one of the things that turned our marriage around, the dialogue never really turned it around, but Harville decided to add zero negativity, and every night before going to bed, we practiced taking out a calendar, becoming zero negative, and having joke books. And we would put on Groucho Marx glasses, tell each other jokes, learn to laugh, do that with our kids, and give
It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. But here we are, now in the relationship of our dreams. So,
one of the things you can think about is, how can you be vulnerable with your couples? Are there stories that you can tell them about your life and your struggles? And Harville put these sides together, and I didn't ask him to put in my story around the brain, but we get so much feedback from people that say that hearing about how hard it was for us makes it easier for them, because they'll look at us and go, oh yeah, they can do that, they're compatible, but I'm married to a jerk. It's never going to work with my jerky husband, but it's easy for them to say. And that when we reveal to other people that this was really, really hard for us to do too, then it gives them hope for their relationship. So you all might think, as you're working with clients in your office, ways you can be vulnerable.
the way we start therapy is that we never do a diagnosis. I don't think couples need to be diagnosed. They're not sick. They're scared. So, and they're not living the way they would like to live, but they know how they like to live. And so what we spend the first session or the first 3 months on, depending on how long it takes, is getting the dream. So we don't let them go into the past and discuss how they blew it and how awful that was. We want them to go into the future and begin to construct their possibility, their potentiality. And we sit with that until they can turn that into a behavioral play, a scenario. What they do with each other, how they look at each other, how they talk to each other, what feelings they generate with each other. And then you go back and say, well, what would you have to let go of in the present to have that future? And that's the way we then connect with the stuff that they brought in that they want to talk about. But they can't talk about that until they talk about where they want to go. Now we have their roadmap about where they want to come out. And we have that
probably want to have
roadmap.
more fun.
So then
Right.
that roadmap, we can
So
then,
we like to practice
anytime they're doing anything, we want to work on something, we got a roadmap. Listen, you want to go to California, then don't go north to Minnesota. Go to California, stay on the path. And this is what you'll have to let go of. This is what you have to add to your relationship to get there. But the research on the brain now definitively says that the brain has difficulty dealing with the past. What it loves is constructing, it's a creative brain. What it loves is constructing a positive future with infinite possibilities. And what we find as we go deeper and deeper into quantum physics is that what quantum people talk about is the change from a fixed world of causality to the quantum world is that you move into infinite possibilities until you choose one. But until you say, I want to do this, you have an infinite number of things you can choose. And that moves the brain forward in a constructive way.
The brain
and
is
begins to
so
integrate.
exciting. You know, Sigmund Freud said the brain you're born with is the brain you're going to die with. And, you know, maybe you could do psychotropic medications, electric shock, maybe a lobotomy, but forget trying to change your brain on your own. But now we know we have social brains, that our brains are experience dependent, and our brains are transformed by our relationships. I'm going to say two things, and then other people will close this. I just want to lift up, Lori, what you said at the beginning. The greatest vehicle for change is the relationship. And what Mark said about, and one of the biggest problems in a relationship is receiving love. And those were just two very wise things that sort of set the pace here for us to be with you today.
And the biggest solution to receiving love is to give love. Because once you practice giving love, you become a receptor of the love you give, and your brain then drops its defense against receiving. You know, the defense against receiving is simply about fear. So if you can go under that, the subterfuge of loving you, and then my brain feels loved, then the fear goes away. So there are a lot of little subterfuges that you can use that produce amazing results. So, okay. So what we want to do is to say to you, who are